If you've seen any international news recently, then you may have seen this. The flag of the European Union, 12 yellow stars in a circle on a field of blue. A symbol of the unity of the European peoples, developed through their working together to achieve a greater future, a unity which surely no person would ever impugn. Except, this flag was not originally designed for the EU, and it doesn't even look like any of the flags of the member countries. So where did it come from? Well, it all started back in the long ago of 1949, where having had rather enough of this, and fearing a fair amount more of that, 10 European nations, Belgium, Denmark, France, Ireland, Italy, Luxembourg, the Netherlands, Norway, Sweden, and the United Kingdom, came together to form the Council of Europe, with the grand aim of achieving a greater unity between its members and safeguarding a future of peace and prosperity throughout the continent. To do this though, they needed a symbol for everyone to get behind, and so, like any good bureaucracy, the council organised a committee to get to work reviewing proposals, with ideas coming in almost immediately. One of these first submissions was by a French woman called Camille Menet in 1949. She took the 6 colours present on all of the European flags at the time and synthesised them together based on the frequency of their occurrence, and she even sent in a prototype. By 1950, the council had grown, acquiring 5 new member states, and the submissions kept on coming in, ranging from the simple to the complex to the interesting. Some even suggested adopting the pre-existing European or Pan-European movement flags, which were already being used. However, the committee decided that they should look for a brand new design so as to avoid any confusion, and whilst they were at it, in an attempt to keep design submissions somewhat in check, they also set out the guidelines that the design should have a pleasing appearance and avoid any clashing colour combinations, therefore sadly ruling out Menet's bold design. The committee also decided that any design should have an orthodox heraldic design, meaning they should follow traditional European emblem design methods. This is also why this is azure and not just blue, and also why these technically aren't stars, they're actually mullets. Additionally, all designs had to have a distinct symbolic meaning, and should not, as many design submissions up to that point had done, feature any Christian symbols such as crosses, just in case any of the council's members took exception to them. With these rules in hand, the committee went on pouring through submissions. One design, which made a particularly big impact, was from the then president of the European Culture Centre, Salvador de Madariaga. Madariaga's design consisted of a constellation of stars on an azure background, making out the capital cities of Europe with a big star for Strasbourg, the capital of the council. This, however, ended up looking less like a quirky map of Europe, and more like, well, a random collection of stars, resulting in the committee turning down the design. Another design, a yellow star on an azure background, was also submitted around this time, though this one was rejected for being the same as the Belgian Congo flag. Although both of these designs were turned down, they created a trend of yellow stars on blue, with the design scheme eventually appearing in a number of future submissions. In total, there were 101 design submissions, of which 12 were shortlisted and 1 was finally selected, that well-known design of an azure field with a circle of 15 yellow stars. 15 stars? Not 12? That's right, and although it may look very similar to today's design, the 15-star version was actually highly contentious. This was because the number of stars was meant to reflect the number of the council's member states, the original founders plus the newcomers of Greece, Iceland, Turkey, West Germany, and the Saar Protectorate. What is the Saar Protectorate? Well, it's a very long story spanning several centuries, but in a nutshell, when Germany lost World War II and was consequently divided into the 4 sectors, a long fought-over area in the French sector, the Saar, was partitioned into a dependent territory of France. At the time, there was a bit of a hanging question as to whether it would become part of France, be given back to Germany, or make its own way as a standalone state, and so to have the Saar immortalised as a separate member state on the design didn't go down too well with the German representative, who said adopting this emblem would prejudice future discussions and would be recognising a hitherto non-existent state. However, having recently lost the most destructive war in human history, in a room surrounded by the victors, nobody really cared, and the design was voted in anyway. Whilst this solved the issue for a short time, the ethos of ignoring each other's problems wasn't quite in line with what the council was trying to achieve, and so less than a year later, encouraged by the increasing unrest of the Saar's population, the committee was forced to suspend the use of the 15-star design and pick a new design instead. After almost picking this 8-ring design, which was turned down at the last moment because it looked too similar to both the Olympic rings and an image of chains, and after almost returning to Madariaga's constellation design, a series of designs by a member of staff at the council, Arsene Heitz, were accepted as the new emblem for the Council of Europe, who, on the 9th of December 1955, officially adopted this as their emblem, 12 yellow stars in a wreath on a blue background. So that's it? Story over? Well, no, not exactly, as this brings us to the last problem, because you may have noticed that this and this are not the same design. So is there a missing link, or designer? Early designs by Heitz show little to no interest in the yellow stars on blue design until the submission by Madariaga with his constellation design. Additionally, then Director of Information for the Council, Paul Levy, is quoted as saying that he is responsible for the design, stating that Heitz made too many different submissions and that he himself designed the proportions and aspects of the chosen flag. Levy even had an explanation for the number of stars, saying that it was not only a compromise, seeing as other numbers were too controversial, but also that 12 is a number of perfection due to there being 12 signs of the zodiac, 12 hours on a clock, and 12 months in a year. Despite this, Heitz still claimed that it was his design, claiming that his inspiration for the 12 stars came from the stars representing the 12 apostles, which are often depicted around the Virgin Mary's head, which sort of breaks the no Christian symbols rule, but on the other hand it had been 6 years at this point, so it's easy to see why they might have just let it slide. So it's hard to tell who, if anyone, is telling the whole truth here. Surviving documentation and information is sketchy to say the least, and is in some places self-conflicting, such as this section on the Council of Europe website, which has one source saying Heitz was the designer, right next to another saying Levy was. So perhaps the safest thing to do is to say that this design came mainly from Heitz, having been inspired by Madariaga, with refinement by Levy, and just leave it there. But I'll leave it down to you to make your own interpretations. Irrespective of designer, in 1955, this flag was selected and made the official flag of the Council of Europe. Mission finally accomplished. The design would go on to be used as a symbol of Europe for many decades until, in 1985, it was adopted by the European communities, which would go on to make a treaty in 1993, forming the European Union, complete with a flag.